Guide Amicia and her brother Hugo through a nightmarish landscape filled with crazed, flesh-eating rats and relentless, maniacal soldiers controlled by a power-hungry religious zealot in a Plague Tale Innocence. What's up, it's Sergeant Sentinel, and as always, make sure you hit the like button and that you share the video with other gamers. Now, A Plague Tale Innocence is a third-person action-adventure game with terror themes that focuses heavily on stealth and puzzle elements throughout and was originally released May 14th, 2019 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Microsoft Windows. It was later given a current generation upgrade for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles, and the original version for the Nintendo Switch. Now, for this review video, I played the PlayStation 5 version. Developed by Asobo Studio and published by Focus Home Interactive, A Plague Tale Innocence takes place in 14th century France and places the player in the boots of Amicia de Rouen, a noble girl who finds herself rescuing her brother and fleeing for their lives from Lord Nicholas and his Inquisition troops as they slay all who resist their pursuit of the young Hugo. Having been a sickly boy since birth, Hugo has largely been cared for by his mother Beatrice, and she's an alchemist. That does play into the story. You'll see as it progresses how that ties in. Meanwhile, Amicia has a solid relationship with her father Robert. He taught her hunting and how to use her slingshot. That also comes into play in the story. And there is tension between Amicia and her mother Beatrice, largely due to the mother's significant focus on the brother. And the why is explained later, like I said. But at first it simply appears to be as if the mother does not care for the daughter the way she does for the brother. Now, there is a dynamic, though, between the brother and the sister. Yes, they haven't had much time together, but they do care for one another, and Amicia kind of has to be more caring and understanding about Hugo because he's naive about how the world works, not only because of his age, but because he's been extremely sheltered, because he's been sick. And so for the first part of the game, she does have to care for him a lot, but it's not to the point where it dominates the entire game. It's just a couple of the first chapters. She basically has to make sure that Hugo's with her, but as the story progresses, it changes the dynamic and she's able to go on missions without him because he's cared for by other young kids and teenagers that they meet. So that keeps it basically from being tedious. It's also revealed that the mother was into secretive research, and this was meant to help the younger brother. Like I said, as the story progresses, you learn more about this. Amicia figures it out. She learns the depths of her mother's knowledge and how much she really sacrificed for young Hugo to cure this illness that he has. The story is emotional, it's gripping, and it keeps you invested from start to finish. It never feels boring or tedious, which is a valuable quality for a story-driven game to have. The action is simple yet solid. The combat mechanics are almost always on point, with only a couple of issues with aiming popping up, notably in a specific boss level, but I won't. To avoid spoilers, I'm not going to talk about that. And the perfect balance the game strikes between stealth, puzzle areas, and boss fights makes it enjoyable and worthwhile. Now, you also can upgrade the sling, the pouch that you carry, different components in. It's kind of like The Last of Us in how Joel could upgrade his different weapons and different things that actually matter to the gameplay. This game allows you to do that as well. There are also collectibles that you can find along the way that add to the story a little bit because of how certain like Hugo has never been really out in the woods or anything, so the little flowers that he finds, he's interested in them, and it's kind of, comments are made by Alicia whenever she finds these about how Hugo would like them, or when she's actually with him, that, oh, this flower is nice, or it builds upon the relationship Amicia has with her little brother Hugo and how much she cares about him. So these different collectibles that you do find do tie into the story, not in a heavy-handed way, but in a very light, kind of non-intrusive way, which is cool. For these types of collectibles, you want it to be where it doesn't really trample on the story or negatively affect it in any way. And these collectible items, they do that. And so it's nice to go around and find them. You don't necessarily have to find all of them, but if you do find them along your way, It's cool. It does add little bits of information, to the story. The area that may frustrate some gamers, though, is the boss fights. Now, to be clear, I'm not a high-skill gamer who lives for Soulsborne games, nor do I have the time or patience to get good for those types of experiences. However, the boss fights and challenging sections for A Plague Tale Innocence are absolutely doable if you properly use your environment, your weapons on hand, and your enemy's weaknesses. There will be some who seek to plow through games mindlessly blasting everything in sight. Like, this is a Gears of War game, and that's not going to work. Sneaking and well-placed shots are very important in levels and most boss fights, and finesse over brute stupidity is the name of the game. Now, in order to tackle these bosses, each one is going to have different weaknesses or weak points, and you kind of have to assess the situation when you're fighting them. There is a boss in this game that you actually have to use an environmental kill in order to take him out. I'm not going to expand on that, but just know that you can't take him out unless you get him in a certain position, because there are no weak points. But you have to look for that when you're in that level. And this is one of the things that I found that was kind of one of the only minuses that I found. If you don't allow this boss to walk forward in this certain section and go in there with him, you can't get in there to trigger this environmental kill, which basically means you'll be running around wasting all of your rocks and other ammo that you have, and you'll never be able to defeat him. So it feels like this kind of a glitch, I guess, or an oversight by the developers, that they didn't think this door would shut and not be able to be opened. I've also had, because I played this boss fight a few different times until I realized you got to walk through and get to this main area where this environmental kill is. I've had guards spawn behind me, which made it significantly more difficult, that weren't there previously, so that was challenging. So it's just one of those things you have to watch for. So when a certain boss is walking through an area, make sure you stay behind him, stealth of course, and then when the environmental opportunity presents itself, take it and you'll be able to squash him, no issue. I played the game narrated in French for the sake of authenticity, and the voice acting, soundtrack, and effects are all top-notch. The frame rate was locked at 30 frames per second for last generation versions, but the current generation version, at least on PS5, runs 60 frames per second at 1440p and looks beautiful, but also terrifying when you're watching the swarms of rats completely eat soldiers down to the bone faster than a fat kid devours a dozen chili cheese hot dogs at a summer cookout. It is terrifying, even if rats don't necessarily bother you that much. But that's good, because it's what the game is going for. It's trying to convey the sheer terror that these characters feel when thousands of rats can consume a soldier and dissolve them almost instantly. It's crazy, and it makes it almost feel like this is the rat version of Resident Evil. Instead of zombies, it's rats. But that's a good thing, and that it really nails that feel of sheer terror that you feel in this game whenever you're around rats, and whenever you're in levels where you're going to have to encounter them, or they could pop out of crevices or come up from the ground, and it's going to catch you by surprise and you're not going to expect it. That's good, though, that it gives those vibes, because that's one of this game's best strengths. From start to finish, A Plague Tale Innocence is a beautifully crafted story of brother and sister surviving a terrifying series of events as they uncover a mystery that could change everything, not just for the two of them, but it could change everything for 14th century France as well. Now, it's available right now on last and current generation Xbox and PlayStation consoles, as well as Microsoft Windows and the Nintendo Switch. Me personally, if I was going to pick it up, I'd pick it up on a system or platform where you could play it at 60 frames per second, because it's absolutely beautiful and it runs so damn smooth. Anyway, that's it for this review video of A Plague Tale Innocence. Thank you for watching. I do greatly appreciate it. If you did like it, hit that like button. If you didn't, keep it to yourself. And be sure to check out the other game reviews I have on my channel. This is Sergeant Sentinel. Take it easy, gamers.